Next, we have Susan Jennings.
Hi, my name's Susan Jennings, and I am a founding member of Keeping Individuals with Intellectual Disabilities Safe. And I'm also the mother of a severely autistic young man with dual diagnosis, IDD and comorbid psychiatric disorders. And it's been a long, hard journey, a journey still continuing. He's the autistic individual who tears off doors, kicks in walls, kicks out van windows, elopes into traffic, and so forth. He was placed right away out of high school into a group home, several group homes, and was discharged in the space of 4 short years. He was discharged from 6 different group homes by 3 different providers who could not manage his challenging behaviors in their particular residential models. They are told they can manage everyone, but they can't. There are systemic shortcomings to the community group home system that no amount of money can remediate, and I'll discuss that in a minute. But while he was there, his eye socket was broken. He was covered in mysterious bruises. He was exposed to pornography. He slept on a bare mattress in his street clothes. They used psychotropic drugs to sedate him. It didn't work. It backfired. His behaviors became worse, but it did leave him with a host of a Parkinsonian tremor in his hands, female breasts, intractable insomnia, and psychotic breaks with reality. Now, I hear a lot about forced institutionalization, but you can't force your way into an institution, at least not in Pennsylvania. They've been closed to admissions for at least 30 years. We were able to get an attorney. We were able to force our way in to a state IDD, or what I call an intermediate care facility in Pennsylvania called Whitehaven Center, and that became his salvation. That became his sanctuary. Now, my son is not an anomaly. He's not alone. He's not unique. There are 500,000, the DDS caseload, 40% represent autism. 80% of those are children, but they are coming of age. There will be 500,000 autistic adults entering adulthood in the next 10 years, and they will need housing. Now, my son was in 6 different psychiatric wards because the group home would put him there and then discharge him. He stayed in 1 psychiatric ward for 6 months. This is a phenomenon known as psychiatric boarding, and it's unfortunately becoming more and more common. The Washington Post did a story on it, Nowhere to Go. Young people with severe autism languish weeks or longer in hospitals. When you eliminate the institution, 2 more institutions rise in its place: jails and psychiatric wards, both expensive, both inappropriate. And I'm looking for okay. So there are systemic shortcomings to community group homes. They cannot serve everyone. One size does not fit all. Olmsted recognized this when they said in their ruling, as already observed by the majority, the ADA is not reasonably read to impel states to phase out institutions, placing patients in need of close care at risk. Some individuals may need institutional care from time to stabilize acute psychiatric symptoms. For other individuals, no placement outside the institutional settings may ever be appropriate. For these persons, institutional settings are needed and must remain available. So for someone like my son, the intermediate care facility offered a superior form of care for him. What seemed to be the least restrictive setting, a group home, was actually the most restrictive because it could not meet his severe behavioral challenges. Now, in most instances, large institutions are less expensive than scattered, dispersed community settings. At this point, when the centers are closed to admissions, there are fixed costs at the centers. So there are fewer patients to share the cost. That's why they seem more costly. But in fact, in a congregate care setting, there are fewer professionals to serve more patients. And they know this in hospitals, they know this in private. This is a financial efficiency that the rest of the world uses. I like to quote, all the trauma and abuse that my son suffered in the community group home was not cheap. It cost $369,000 to pay to the provider. That did not include room and board. It cost $345,000 to the taxpayer to throw him in and out of 6 different psychiatric wards. And I'm not counting the thousands of dollars for 911 calls to the police, emergency rides to the ER, the court cost to Section 302 him into psych wards. So when you put someone in an inappropriate setting with too little assistance and supervision, it costs you more. The state center is a bargain, the all-inclusive. And why does it work? It works because ICFs must meet the most rigorous standards in order to be certified by CMS. Appendix J, which is 255 pages long. 254 pages long. Community settings do not have to meet this standard, and they seldom do. ICFs must engage in active treatment, which is a rigorous implementation of treatment, training, and health services. Waiver homes do not, and they seldom do. I want to talk a little bit about the DSP shortage. You're basically asking frontline caregivers to handle life and death emergencies at fast food wages. There's no opportunity for advancement. They seldom have benefits. It's a thankless job, and I don't blame people. 2 out of 5 DSP workers will leave in a year, and there's 20% of vacancies that will never be filled. So what you have are long, ever-growing waiting lists for whatever inadequate services are left. There's a cruel movement afoot to get rid of all out-of-home services for the disabled individuals, in particular autism. If aging parents do not have the strength or the facilities or the resources to keep their big, strong, tantruming sons from running into traffic, detaching their own retinas, breaking their windows, who does? Certainly not adult foster care. They wouldn't fare any better. So what are you left with? You are left with jails, you are left with psych wards, and you are left with the streets. We are a big enough and a great enough country that we can offer a full range of services, including ICS. And I hate to call it the lower end of the spectrum, because they're not any lower in humanity than any of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings.